In the early morning hours of May 6, 2023, a gunshot detection system registered 9 shots fired in the 8100 block of South Blackstone Avenue in Chicago at approximately 1:45 a.m. An officer responded to a 911 call 30 minutes later and discovered Officer Areanah Preston's body, a 3-year veteran of the Chicago Police Department who had been mere steps away from making it into her home, dead from multiple gunshot wounds. The story and the sad tragedy that would play out over the next few days was just another example of the senseless violence that has plagued Chicago for decades.
4 people are now charged with first-degree murder in the shooting death of Chicago police officer Areanah Preston. Police say the group had been on a crime spree before killing the officer. Fox 32's Joni Lum joins us live from police headquarters with the latest. Joni?
Hello, Sylvia. Investigators had to work through their sorrow, and they say that community involvement helped them to make arrests and stop a crime spree that victimized women alone before it ended with the fatal shooting of Officer Preston. The offenders are teens: 19-year-old Travell Breland, 19-year-old Joseph Brooks, 18-year-old Jaquan Buchanan, and a 16-year-old male. Police say at least 2 of them shot at Officer Areanah Preston when she was returning home from work at 1:42 a.m. Saturday. Police say the 4 offenders were traveling in a stolen red Kia, and they were looking for people to victimize. They allegedly committed multiple crimes before ambushing Officer Preston.
As Officer Preston was returning home from her tour of duty early Saturday morning, 4 offenders pulled up in a stolen vehicle. The offenders quickly exited the vehicle and ran towards Officer Preston while armed. An offender fired at Officer Preston, who returned fire. The offenders continued to shoot Officer Preston, and offenders stole Officer Preston's weapon before all offenders fled the scene in a stolen vehicle.
Her last arrest that evening, even the arrestee, once finding out the news of what had happened, she wept. But that speaks to credit of Officer Preston.
Commander Pendarvis says that the charges put police on a path to heal from the loss of this star officer if they can ever get over their grief. The officer's weapon was stolen. It has not been recovered. That stolen car was set on fire, and those 4 offenders are going to be in bond court at this hour. Reporting live at police headquarters, I'm Joni Lum. Back to you.
Continuing our team coverage now, CBS 2 is always investigating, and our Marissa Perlman is live in the newsroom digging into the suspect's criminal history. Marissa.
Well, Erica, they all now face first-degree murder and armed robbery charges in Saturday's killing, all of them with a criminal history. 3 of the suspects were 14 at the time of their first arrest. The youngest was arrested for the first time at just 13.
Each of the 4 suspects in Officer Areanah Preston's murder has a lengthy criminal history. Their records show a pattern of committing new crimes while on probation. The most serious sentence, Joseph Brooks, 18. He's been arrested 9 times since 2019. Charges involve a stolen car, theft, and armed robbery. Last September, he was sent to juvenile detention for a carjacking he committed while on probation and was classified as a violent juvenile offender. Sources tell the CBS 2 investigators this case was closed just a few weeks before Officer Preston's murder. Jaquan Buchanan, also 18, was arrested in 2019 for robbery. While on probation, he was arrested again for carjacking. Last November, a juvenile arrest warrant was issued related to both of those crimes. Then there's 19-year-old Travell Breland, who has faced multiple charges as an adult and a juvenile. He too was on probation at the time of the murder. His record dates back to 2018 and includes attacking a teacher and pushing his mother down the stairs. He's never been given more than probation or supervision. The youngest suspect, Jalen Frazier, is 16. His first arrest in 2019 was at 13. He served 4 years probation. While on probation for robbery, he was arrested multiple times for weapons offenses, armed robbery, and having a stolen car. He, too, spent time in juvenile detention.
Now, we do know 3 of the 4 suspects have had some DCFS involvement. The details of those cases are not yet clear. All of these suspects are being held without bond. Live in the newsroom, Marissa Perlman, CBS 2 News. Erica.
Marissa.
Took officers less than 48 hours to track down and arrest the 4 suspects.
Arjo Donlan here now with a closer look at what happened during that specific amount of time.
Yeah, we learned an awful lot of new information today. Detectives say 4 suspects set off on a crime spree just before midnight on May 6th when one of the suspects' girlfriends called him saying she needed money for a barbecue. Minutes later, all 4 got into her white Dodge Avenger SUV, wearing all black with face coverings. Their movements after that were all tracked by police pod cameras and cell phone pings. 11:57. A woman is robbed at gunpoint near 46th and Ellis by 4 men who got out of a white Dodge Avenger. Her wristlet, belt, phone, credit cards all stolen. 12:39 a.m. A red Kia Forte parked at 47th and Indiana is stolen. 1:07 a.m. The red Kia pulls up to a home at 100th and Wallace. 3 men get out, push 2 people to the ground and steal a Coach bag and cell phone. 1:30 a.m. A person parking a Tesla at 91st and Merrill is robbed, the thieves taking his cell phone and Tesla key. 1:42 a.m.
Shots fired picking up 9 rounds at 8157 South Blackstone Avenue.
Sensors picked up the sound of gunfire, but officers didn't immediately respond because of a backlog in the district. 1:51 a.m. Calls begin coming in about a red Kia set on fire in an alley near 72nd and Eberhard. 2:02 a.m. 911 gets a notification of a crash in the same spot as the ShotSpotter notification 20 minutes prior. We now know that was Officer Preston's Apple Watch alerting 911 she was in distress. At approximately 2:15 a.m.
We got a person shot. It's an off-duty PO. Get an ambulance here now.
That officer not waiting for the ambulance, instead driving Officer Preston directly to the University of Chicago where she died. She had been shot once in the face and once in the neck. Bullet casings recovered from the scene show 2 guns were fired, one of which was Officer Preston's. That night, prosecutors say one of the defendants proudly bragged to a friend about taking part in the robberies and shooting of Officer Preston. That friend immediately alerting police. Fast forward to Sunday night. Police are monitoring a home at 76th and Bishop when Jaquan Buchanan is seen getting into an Uber. Officers pull over the car and arrest Buchanan and his ex-girlfriend. As they're arresting him, Buchanan begins screaming, alerting others in a home nearby. After a lengthy standoff with SWAT, the others were taken into custody. A gun recovered from the back seat of that Uber has since been traced to Officer Preston's murder, according to police. But Officer Preston's gun is still missing. One of the defendants reportedly admitting they sold it. So again, a lot of new information. None of it helps to make any sense of it, though.
No. Thanks for that comment.
Other news we're following tonight. New developments in the murder of Chicago police officer Areanah Preston. An Indiana man faces federal charges accused of illegally selling a gun that was recovered after Preston was killed. Prosecutors do not say this is the gun actually used to kill the officer, but they say the suspect bought that gun in Indiana and then sold it in Illinois. Meantime, it was a true celebration of life for the young officer Preston at her funeral today.
I would like to thank God for giving us this angel.
Officer Preston's mother was gracious as she and her family paid tribute. Tonight, the effort to support the family continues with a fundraiser.
Tia Ewing is here live on the west side tonight with more on the story. Tia.
Well, Corey and Don, we're located at 1340 West Washington Boulevard right now, where we've watched Chicago police officers come in from all sides of the city since around 7 tonight. We know that T-shirts are being sold inside, food was donated, and donations are being requested. Every single dollar will go to Officer Areanah Preston's family.
One Areanah, one last week.
The Brotherhood for the Fallen hosting a fundraiser for the family of Officer Areanah Preston. Just 2 months ago, they hosted a fundraiser for another Chicago police officer murdered on the job.
Yeah, I did 22 years with the Chicago Police Department. I've been retired almost 4 years. I've never seen it that close.
13 miles away from the West Loop.
Leads me in the paths of righteousness.
Hundreds gathered at Trinity United Church of God, remembering the 24-year-old as fearless, dedicated to education, civic service, and had a larger-than-life personality.
She was like, Jesse, I need to know exactly what to put on there. Because, you know, this is big. You know everything about me big. And truly,
She was this big, but she was really this big.
This was the scene on May 6th in Avalon Park on Chicago's South Side, where Officer Preston was shot and killed after her night shift ended. 4 teens are charged with first-degree murder, armed robbery, and other crimes. All of them are held without bond. Preston received a full ride to Illinois State University, worked for Chicago PD for 3 years. Her mother accepted her master's degree from Loyola University.
Here to accept the degree is Officer Preston's mother.
Officer Preston's mother and sister speaking at her funeral.
It is so heartwarming to see just the impact she had on the city of Chicago and beyond.
We love you, Nani, and you're an amazing big sister and best friend.
Officer Areanah Preston was laid to rest today. As for this fundraiser, it goes until 11 o'clock tonight. Live in the West Loop, Tia Ewing, Fox 32, Chicago.
That somber scene on Chicago's West Side today. Police squad cars escorting the body of Officer Preston from the medical examiner's office on Chicago's West Side to the funeral home in Oak Lawn. Funeral arrangements for the 24-year-old officer are still pending, and there are developments in the investigation today. Police now have 5 people in custody in connection with Preston's murder. Her death now classified as in the line of duty. Fox 32's Joni Lum reports.
The Chicago Police 5th District has suffered numerous police officer deaths. They are in mourning while detectives sort out the evidence. Numerous people in custody in connection with the death of this young, bright Chicago police officer. Police were involved in a barricade situation at 76th and Bishop yesterday morning, taking into custody suspects that might be connected to the shooting death of 24-year-old Areanah Preston. Police believe it was an armed robbery that turned deadly. She had just completed her shift and was shot outside of her home. Preston was with the department 3 years, a graduate of Illinois State. She was due to receive her master's degree from Loyola University this weekend. Her death has neighbors truly saddened.
Sad. It's sad. You know, a lot of these kids don't have no resources. They're out here just roaming. You know, they have nothing to do but just either, you know, try to hustle or rob people, and it's just sad. It's just really sad.
There are a couple of vigils planned in memory of Officer Preston, one at the 5th District where she worked, and another on Thursday at the DuSable Museum. Joni Lum, Fox 32, Chicago.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Green Lit Gang TV. Appreciate you guys checking out the channel. Hope you enjoyed the video. Today we're going to Chicago with it. We got to change it up. Got to find new stories. It took me an hour and a half of trying to find something new, something different, something I thought you guys would like. And I actually came across the story of Areanah Preston, who was murdered just about a year and a half ago, May 6, 2023. Crazy story, sad story. She had her whole future ahead of her. Really seemed like she was trying to make a difference. And a lot of people kind of roll your eyes at that, because I think as a young cop, when I've read things and watched documentaries, even movies, right? When you see these young cops that come in full of energy, full of vigor, they think they're going to make a big change. And ultimately they just kind of realize you do the best you can. You make the arrests you can. You stop what you can. But the system's a system, and crime's not going anywhere. And our system is broken. Our war on gangs, our war on drugs, our war on going after basically people of color and people below the poverty line, it doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it only affects those less fortunate. Not to say what happened to Officer Preston is okay, because what these young men did to her was absolutely awful. Preston, who was a 2020 graduate of Illinois State University in criminal justice, she'd worked for the Chicago Police Department for 3 years, and she was due to graduate May 13th, so about a week after her death. She had been due to graduate from Loyola University with a master's in criminology, so she had big plans. As I stated in the beginning, a fellow officer, responded to gunshots in the 8100 block of South Blackstone Avenue in Chicago at around 1:40 to 1:45 a.m. They said she was shot about 1:40. A little bit of confusion on him responding 30 minutes later, because on multiple things I read, it says she was shot at about 1:40 a.m. Responding officer had called an ambulance Preston was transported by police vehicle to the University of Chicago Medical Center, where she was pronounced dead. Arrests were made pretty quickly in the case, and we'll get to why they were able to round these guys up so fast. 4 teens have been charged with murder in connection with the killing of Officer Areanah Preston, who was found shot to death near her Avalon Park home over the weekend, police announced. Treval Breland, Joseph Brooks, both 19 years old, Jaquan Buchanan, 18, and a 16-year-old who will be charged as an adult, face first-degree murder charges in the fatal shooting, along with additional charges for armed robbery, arson, burglary, possession of a stolen vehicle, and unlawful use of a weapon, authorities said. These guys are, and I hate to say it, because at first I thought, oh, teenagers, like they're under the age of 18. It's like, no, they're still adults, except the fourth one, the 16-year-old, who later did get named, and it's just sad, but it's like these guys already at a young age were career criminals. I put that one clip up where it talked about the one guy pushing his mom down the stairs. They had a long history of violence in their short time, and it sucks to want to say there's no hope for people, but when you read through the story and the crime spree these guys had been on it just that day, it all started with one of the defendant's girlfriends wanting basically to have a barbecue. So they said, okay, they got in her Dodge Avenger, and they proceeded to go rob and assault and shoot at people to round up the money and then some in order to get what they needed. Police said at least 3 of the suspects exited the vehicle and 2 of them started shooting. A switch was attached to one of the murder weapons. And for those of you who don't know, Chicago kind of made the switch really popular and famous. Now the crime for having a switch on a gun gets you multiple years just for having a switch. There's been people that have manufactured switches or bought and sold switches. They made a living off just doing that. And what the switch does is it takes the gun from semi-automatic to where you have to continue to pull the trigger with your finger to fully automatic, where you just got to squeeze. It's going to let off multiple shots. All that does is increase the amount of damage the individual shooting the gun can do. Officer Preston returned fire. She was hit at least twice, grazed by a bullet. She was also shot in the face. One of the defendant's cell phone data pinged his location to a nearby cell tower. That defendant was Brooks. Yeah, these guys were kind of booked from the beginning. That was Joseph Brooks. So his cell phone data pinged his location to a nearby cell tower where the homicide occurred. According to prosecutors, Preston was wearing an Apple Watch, which sent an alert of a traffic crash to police dispatch, which sent a 4th district officer to the scene. The officer rendered aid before driving Preston to the hospital. She was pronounced dead. Preston's weapon was stolen from the scene and sold. That's how fast this stuff happens, because these guys were rounded up in like 48 hours. So yeah, it did say one of the kids, after the shooting, they grabbed some things, and he ran over and grabbed the officer's gun, which I thought was pretty crazy. And the suspects fled in a vehicle that was stolen roughly an hour before the shooting. That car was stolen in the 4700 block of South Indiana Avenue, police said. Her service weapon has not been recovered, according to police. And I'm like, God, that's got to be something that in the hood and with gangs, it's like, this is a deceased cop's gun. I hate to say it, but that's got to be like a badge of honor. That's got to be like a hot item. As messed up as that is to say, it's true. And y'all listening know what I'm saying. Y'all know that is true 100%. As messed up as it is, as warped as it is, it's just a fact. Police said the stolen vehicle was found later, which is at Red Kia, in the 7200 block of South Rhodes Avenue, and had been set on fire roughly 20 minutes after the shooting, which accounts for the arson charge, because they all got charged with arson. So it's like, these guys are moving quick, man. 20 minutes after the shooting, they burned the car. The gun gets sold probably within the next 12 hours. Later that evening, now listen to this. This is where they get caught up. The 16-year-old allegedly called a friend and discussed the murder. Quote, he asked if he had seen the news about a police officer being killed. The 16-year-old said it was his work. That's what you get, man. Young kids, you want the credit. You are 16. You're coming up in a gang. You are known as a guy that was in the car and maybe shot at a police officer. Your rep goes through the roof. It's just a matter of fact. Areanah Preston's mother, Diane Moon, said, anytime you can shoot somebody and say, that was my work, what kind of human would say that about another human being? Well, a gang member would. A young gang member on the come up. The 16-year-old went on to say, quote, told him they were out robbing people when they saw a single female in her car. They were going to rob her, but the female shot at them. One of the guys he was with shot back at the cop and killed her, end quote. That's because she was off duty. So I don't know. She must have changed. She must have maybe changed back at the station, because all they said was they seen a female at the car, so they didn't know they killed a cop until after the fact. That friend later went to police with what the 16-year-old allegedly said, and during an interview with detectives, called him and put him on speakerphone. So the friend has this conversation. He goes to police and goes, hey, this is what I was just told. Calls the kid back, puts him on speakerphone, and allows detectives to listen as they talk. During the call, the 16-year-old made additional admissions about the robberies and shooting, including details that had not been released. The 16-year-old said he stayed inside the Kia while the other three suspects robbed and shot Preston. Prosecutors said they later burned that Kia using lighter fluid, he allegedly told police. Each suspect, and I'll go over these, each suspect has been charged with first-degree murder and murder or other forcible felony. The rest of the charges are as follows. So, we're going to go over these really quick, okay? For Travell Breland, he was charged with 5 counts of armed robbery with a firearm, 1 count of possession of a stolen vehicle, 1 count of burglary, 1 count of arson, 1 count of unlawful use of weapon, and 1 count of violating a protection order. Excuse me. For Joseph Brooks, he was charged with 1 count of murder with a strong probability of death, 5 counts of armed robbery with a firearm, 1 count of possession of a stolen vehicle, and 1 count of burglary. The 16-year-old was charged with 2 counts of armed robbery, 1 count of possession of a stolen vehicle, 1 count of burglary, 1 count of arson. So he was very lucky. He ended up not getting the murder charge. Jaquan Buchanan, his are pretty long. He got 1 count of armed robbery with a firearm, 1 count of possession of a vehicle, burglary, arson, 1 count of violating order of protection, unlawful use of a weapon. So, and this is where it's like, when I read the charges, Breland and Brooks are the only ones that where it lists murder, but then it says above that each suspect got charged with murder. So I could be wrong about that. I do believe, actually, now that I'm rereading this, okay, they were all charged with murder. Police said the 4 charged had committed several other crimes shortly before the shooting. Each were held without bail during a bond hearing. Yeah, it was scary. It was crazy. And again, it's like, you don't want to just lock up and throw away the key with some people, but it's like, man, dude, you seen the guy push his mom down the stairs. You're seeing that they were listed, a couple of them were listed as like the top 10. They were in the top 10 as juvenile offenders in the city, which, man, unless you make drastic changes in your life or their environment drastically changes, you know what's up. You know what's going to happen. It's going to continue. It's not being racist. It's not being biased. It's not being, judgmental. It's just facts, man. But I do want to know what you guys think down below. Please leave a comment below on if you think at that age, or actually we'll just go with this. Should the 16-year-old be tried as an adult? And should somebody under the age of 18, when they're given a life sentence, should that mean life, or should you get a chance to get out? So yeah, 2 things. When you're under the age of 18, should you be tried as an adult? And if given life on a capital murder charge, should you be able to have the opportunity to get out? Please comment down below. Until next time, guys, peace.